Welcome to The Corridor of Uncertainty, a podcast at the intersection of mathematics and sport. My name is Rich.
And I'm Jess.
We're both mathematicians at the University of York who spend too much time talking about sport, so we thought we'd make a podcast so we could spend even longer talking about it. This is our first episode, so what are we going to talk about today, Jess?
Well, I thought for the first episode we'd talk about one of my favourite little projects I've ever worked on, called The Split. And in this time when we've been working on it, I've given it as like outreach talks or at open days, given it a talk at conferences. There's a little 6-page condensed paper that's freely available. People can go read that. Have you read it, Rich? Yep, you see. So that's what I thought we'd do with this podcast, so I could tell you about, take it a bit behind the scenes, and kind of, let people see what I've been up to on that project.
We'll pop a link in the notes to that paper.
So as I say, this is a bit behind the scenes of the sort of talk I would give about this piece of work. So when I'm normally giving the talk, the first thing I do is flash up this table for the Scottish Premier League. That's genuinely off the BBC website. You can see the date on there, the 28th of April 2024. It says it was last updated at 2102. This is not like indicative of the time I was getting my slides ready for a talk I was giving on the 29th of April.
Definitely not.
No, it's just when there was a game in the Scottish Premier League. Anyway, so I flash it up and I say, can anybody spot the deliberate mistake? And Rich, I don't know how much you know about the Scottish Premier League, but can you spot the deliberate mistake on that table?
Well, generally with football tables, I usually expect the people with more points to be above the people with less points. So there is something that I can spot in there that causes that problem. Yeah,
let's be weird. Like 6th and 7th look like they're the wrong way round.
Yeah.
And so, that's how we start the talk. And we say, now, either the BBC website's wrong, that could be true, or it's right, and that is what the Scottish Premier League table should look like. So in the course of this podcast and the talk that I give, we'll find out which of those two options it was.
I'm going to guess that the BBC website was right. I mean, they consistently rank Notts County too low in the league, but that's reflected with the numbers, so that's okay.
Well, anyway, like I say, I don't know how much you know about how the Scottish Premier League works, but what I should say is this is very much a joint project with Johan Ruelak, who at the time that we've been working on this project has worked at 3 universities, is at the 3rd one, Loughborough, currently. It was Johan who kind of started talking to me about this. And I had no idea how the Scottish Premier League worked. So I'll give you a little history then if you want.
Mm-hmm. Please do.
So pre-2000-2001, that season, there were 10 teams in the Scottish Premier League. It's a usual kind of football league promotion relegation, just like you'd see in other European leagues. Only 10 teams. So the format was round robin. Play every other team twice at home, twice away. So you've got 9 teams, 4 times 36 fixtures, which is pretty standard for the number of fixtures that you'd have in a football league in Europe. But in 2000 and 2001, they decided to increase the size of the league, add 2 more teams, basically money. Mm-hmm. So if they'd have carried on with the same format, you'd play 44 games.
Well, that's not that many.
Yeah, but they felt that was more than typically for a European league. You've got all the cup things going on as well.
They have a winter break as well in Scotland, don't they? Because it's just too cold. But...
Yes, so you'll see. I've got very specific. As this talk goes on, you'll see I've got very specific knowledge of the Scottish Premier League. That's basically grounds capacities. We'll get there anyway. But winter break details of how the league works. Didn't know those, right? Anyway. So, off we go.
I may be wrong.
They'll be coming up on the screen. So they decided it was too many. So this is what they came up with, right? What they decided was they were going to introduce something called The Split, and hence the title of the podcast. There's 2 splits. Watch out for them. So the first one is they're going to split the season into regular season and playoffs. So that's a bit like American style. Mm-hmm. Get ready for the odd numbers, right? So in the regular season, you play every other team 3 times. Mm-hmm. So then you'll play 33 games. After those 33 games, this is where the second split comes in. They split the league in 2. So you've got the top 6 go into what's called the championship playoff. The bottom 6 go into the relegation playoff, and you play everybody in your little sub-league one more time. So you get, again, odd number, 5 more fixtures.
Just one more time.
Just one more time. Right? So this gives you now a total of 38, which is 2 more than we had before, but more in line with the sorts of numbers that you'd see in a European Football League.
Right. So after they've played each other one more time each, do they then play a bunch more games within them?
No, that's a good question. No, absolutely not. You play each other one more time. The points get added to those that you had before, so it's not quite like an American playoff system. And that's why, so now we know the answer to the question, that's why that league table looked the way it did on the BBC website, because it was the 34th game. I think I was showing it after match week 34. So the team in 7th had won, and they'd now technically had more points than 6, but there's like a ceiling of where they can go on that table now.
So the playoffs aren't really playoffs?
No.
Right.
Not in the sense that you would know it from like
no
Leeds trying to get promoted to the Premier League or
National League playoffs, which are, I now think, great, given that Notts won.
Same with Oldham, So, does that make sense then?
Yeah.
Well, does it, though? Because
now
actually...
Your explanation makes sense. Structure less so.
So actually, just to be fair to the BBC, if you go on the BBC website, obviously not, it depends when you're watching it, but if you go on during that playoff phase, they now do have 2 separate little tables. So they keep that the match week 33 table intact and then split it off. So do have a look at the BBC or any website to look at the Scottish Premier League table after they've started getting into their playoff system. So like we said, does it make sense? So when Johan was telling me about this, I was like, what? And so, basically the idea was, just like we've got on the Code of Uncertainty, it's kind of, right, let's investigate this with maths then. So we can be outraged at how this is done, but, let's put some maths to it.
So this is that 6th place can win the league, but 7th place is at risk of relegation.
Yeah. Okay. So specifically what we wanted to look at was in terms of attendance, because attendance is a massive thing, especially in the Scottish Premier League. There's actually quite a wide range of different sizes of clubs. So the revenue you get from a match day is one of the biggest drivers of income. Obviously, there's TV money as well, but it's the big driver of income. So that's what we're going to focus on, like I say, in these talks that I've given, in the little 6-page piece that you can read. Let's just focus on how this structure has impacted home attendance. So what do you think the first thing we did was when we wanted to look at the impact of this on home attendance?
Make a scatter plot.
Well, so you've straight away gone in with exploratory data analysis, which is exactly what I would tell my students to do, right? What
I tell the students to do is make a scatter plot, have a look at it.
It's not what we did. We just jumped straight in and did the analysis that I'll tell you about later. Started doing some analysis, and this stuff started falling out of it. That then I was giving a talk about this at an outreach event, York Festival of Ideas.
That's a plug.
And somebody in the audience was like, it'd be really great to see a plot of the attendances by match week and then see what they look differently, in the playoffs. I was like, that would be a good plot. So I went away and did that. In fact, actually what I did was turned it into a Shiny app, which again, people can go, this is freely available, very kindly hosted by the University of York Shiny server. So you can go on and have a look at, there's just 3 example seasons in there. You can see exactly what that person was asking for. So it was totally for that person, so they could go and do that and see what they wanted to see. And when we started looking at these plots, like straight away, all that stuff that we'd found from doing the analysis, we were like, oh, this is so obvious now. So there you go. That's the moral of the story, everybody. When we say do exploratory data analysis before you do anything, you should do exploratory data analysis before you do anything. So you look at this and you see that. So at the top here, we've got attendance as a proportion of stadium capacity, because like I say, you've got your Celtic, your Rangers, they've got like 60,000 capacity stadium. But then teams at the bottom of the league, they might be 10,000 capacity stadium. So if I put them all on one plot, it would just not look good. So we do it as a proportion of stadium capacity here. And you can see you've got the green line, the blue lines at the top. That's Celtic and Rangers. And they're kind of stable, pretty much selling out every week. whereas everybody else is a bit more up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And so then if you look, or if you go on the app, if you have a little look at it, you'll see you can pick, for each of our example seasons, you can pick any team and you can see their raw numbers, the number of people who came to the matches. So you can see, for example, if you look at Dundee, who were just sneaking into that championship playoff in 6th, their capacity is 12,000, like we said.
Yeah.
And you see, again, this up and down behaviour, and you can see actually that the top ones are when they're playing Celtic and Rangers, or local derby, historic rival. So you'll see later on. But this starts to give our hypothesis, right? Which is, if the split's having an impact, look in that kind of zone, those last 2 or 3, because it's an odd number, home games that you have. What's going on there? And you can see, for example, we talked about Dundee there. They get that game against Celtic or Rangers.
Yeah. So finishing in the top half means most likely you're going to get a game against Celtic or Rangers.
Yeah. And whereas if you look at, say, Aberdeen, who just missed out on that, they're playing again 3 teams out of the bottom 6, which when you look at it, it's pretty much matched with the attendance they saw during the regular season.
Right. So because they're in the bottom half, but at the top end, they're probably not too worried about relegation because there are teams that are going to be worse than them, but they're also getting these crowds from these smaller teams coming and smaller crowds.
Yeah, exactly. So like I say, we're focusing on today, and the focus of the presentation is just thinking about home attendance and what might happen to home attendance. So when we started doing this exploratory data analysis, not at all confirming what we'd already found, it seemed that it might be, you'd expect if you're in the relegation playoff, you're going to see lower attendances because you're just playing against like none of the glamour teams, basically. So we thought it might be unfair in that way. Right, so that was what we decided to investigate. I should say maybe at this point that if you want to know more, we did look at other things and other aspects. I'll touch on them today, but if you want to know more, hopefully there's a paper coming soon where it's a bit more extended version. You can see even more maths if you want to.
So does the 6-page paper have plenty of maths in?
Yeah, it's got a good amount of maths in. Yeah, it's got some nice tables in there.
Good.
Oh, I mean, so maybe I should say this as well. So Johan's from like a sports management economics kind of field. So also a mathematician, definitely one of us. Definitely one of us because it's sports economics, sports management. So my role in this is kind of as the mathematician. It really is. He's sort of taking the role of a scientist, if that makes sense. So it's Johan's job to take the analysis that we do and think about the kind of real implications, whereas as mathematicians, we kind of let the experts do the practical insight thing.
Yeah, so
anyway.
the things like the finances.
Yes, exactly, yeah. So it's kind of, we were talking about, let's look at attendance because we think that that's important for, my income for the club. And it's like, so Johan, I'll take this and then think about what an impact that might have had. Anyway, so we did this exploratory data analysis, obviously, before we did anything else. And we had this hypothesis that it could be that they're missing out on playing the superstar teams. So, we started to sort of formulate some hypotheses and do a bit of reading around. So the first thing is, it's all right for us to sit here going, oh, odd numbers, it's terrible. Oh, look, it looks like it's having an impact on their attendance. But,
I think
do we have a better alternative?
I think sports discussion is rich with people criticising the status quo and not necessarily having an alternative. So
so we're academics. We like to not be like that. So actually, to be fair, there's a lot of literature on sporting contest design, so how to design what we call optimal sporting contests. So if you go away and read it, you basically find it is really hard to design good sporting contests. So it's easy for us to criticise, but it's actually not easy to do well. I always have a bit of a joke with Johan because I think of all the things we could do, corridor of uncertainty, I mean, episode 1, intersection of maths and sport, I always say contest design is like the most boring aspect of maths and sport because, why do I say that? As I say, I can say it because I work on it, but I think the reason is if it's done well, you shouldn't be talking about it, right? So anyway, it's only here where you're sort of thinking this looks strange that there's something interesting to talk about. It's a bit like refereeing. A good referee, you're not talking about them. So anyway, that's just me totally selling this piece of work that I told you I loved. But anyway, so it is people do work on this, and it is hard. It's really hard to do, especially because, as you've already said, there might be multiple objectives. So it's not always just about winning the league. There might be other things in there, like being in the Champions League.
Yes. Yeah. Also, like the presence of substrata, I suppose you call it, substructures in the leagues creates then this alternative motivations for the teams. And I suppose the Scottish Premier League is a great example of that because it has that really dramatic. You can win the championship or you can go down. So it's really dramatic. It's not just like missing out on money. It's
Yeah, exactly. And so, like you say, in the North American sports leagues, where it's missing out on the playoffs, you're not getting relegated. You're just missing out on the chance to win and more money and so on.
Those edge ones are always like you get to play one more game all the time. And that's it.
And in fact, that's a really good example of where there might be conflicting objectives, because in North American sports leagues, you might see we like all sports, including American sports, but they have a draft system, which is basically about, teams that finish at the bottom get kind of first pick at the upcoming talent. And the idea there, we'll talk about this a bit later, is that would balance the leagues out. So the Yankees are winning all the time, but the rich don't get richer. The hope is that, your team that's come last can draft up some good talent and then they can come and get the Yankees. Anyway, so as you've seen, it's hard. It's hard to do these things really well. So I'm just putting that out there. We're focusing on the impact on attendance. So we have to be able to understand what impact has the split, and only the split, had on attendance. It's like you need to consider every other factor that could impact attendance at a football game so that you can be sure that what you're measuring can, like if you accounted for everything else, it must be the split that's doing this.
Right.
So then you have to think about what sorts of things could impact people coming to a football game. So as I say, one thing we've already touched on is this, again, it's got a nice fancy title, which is competitive balance. So your American sports leagues, and it's generally, I would say, kind of a universally acknowledged truth of sport that fans prefer more balanced leagues.
Right.
So like I said, that's why they're doing that reverse order draft. And, I think that's why people say the Premier League is one of the most watched leagues in the world, because it's
somewhat
more balanced. But what you need to be careful with, like I say, we're straying into the economics literature. They have specific terminology. So competitive balance means how many different people are winning the league. So people would argue, you see a bit this in the papers a bit lately, like, it's boring. We all know that Man City are going to win the Premier League. So that's competitive balance. Or we know it's going to be one of two teams winning the Premier League. That would be having not competitively unbalanced, because it's not every team in the league has really got a chance of winning.
Right.
But then another fancy economics term is the outcome uncertainty hypothesis. Similar, but it's on a match day level. So it's saying, like, on this particular match day, the probability of a home win, maybe that affects how many people go to the game.
Right.
I mean, we'll do a separate episode on this whole thing, right? Later on, plug. But how do you think, just for a little taster now, how do you think do you think it would impact it? And if it would, what sort of pattern do you think it would have?
Yeah, I'm not sure that, like nobody goes to the League Cup games in the early stages when it's deemed to be an easy win over a different team. But the close games often, I suppose if it's a close game where it's a competitive game near the top, is much more interesting. Than a close game in the middle. 15th versus 16th is much less of a sell than first versus second. So it's, I don't know.
Right. So, as I say, the outcome uncertainty hypothesis is a very specific way that the probability of a home win needs to be related to the people attending it. As I say, we'll spend more time on it here in a later episode. But yeah, I mean, to quickly say, they sort of think that, like what you're saying, the more uncertain it is, the more. So, but what you're bringing in there is kind of the level of the competition as well,
right?
Which is nice, because that's also a thing. When we were saying we need to consider everything that could impact the number of people that go to a game, well, quality on the pitch, absolutely. Again, that's why you'd see more people at a Premier League game than a National League game, because it's like, I want to see the best.
Yeah.
But also tied in with that, there's a superstar effect. Again, that can be in an individual level. So, when Messi went and played for Inter Miami, like they were not getting anybody to that ground.
Or-
They were in like a temporary stadium, weren't they?
Yeah, or Cristiano Ronaldo in the
Yeah.
Saudi league.
Exactly. So you just get one superstar player and people start coming
Yeah.
to watch that. Or it can be superstar teams. So, like, we've just seen the Club World Cup again. We could do whole episodes on that. But that was in America where it's soccer is not as popular. And the ones that were selling out were Real Madrid
Yes,
against, say, Chelsea and not
Yeah. Or,
whatever, Ronaldo's team from wherever. That
Yeah.
yeah.
Or, when the Yankees play anybody else.
So we've nicely come round to back to the Scottish Premier League. So like we were seeing in the data, right? That Celtic
Celtic and Rangers.
Rangers, they've got those two things. So they're the glamour clubs that people have heard of.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, they tend to have the more famous players for that same reason. So we're talking about my beloved Joe Hart was obviously at Celtic for a while.
Callum McGregor, ex-Notts.
Yeah.
Great player.
So, like I say, so again, we're thinking about all the factors that might influence how many people go to a game. So, I've just said, I've kind of alluded to this already, but we want to look at how many people go to a game. We want to use maths to do that rigorously. And we've sort of said, right, we need to take account of all these factors and then we can be sure that it's actually the split that's doing this thing. So, it feels like a sort of a regression problem.
So, what's a regression problem then?
Yeah. So, line of best fit. When you're at school, you might have a scatter plot, height versus weight, and you might be sort of using one to predict the other, height to predict weight.
Yeah.
So you get your scatter plot, you get your ruler out.
Yeah.
Mrs. Johnson used to be like, try and get the line so that you're kind of getting it in the middle, minimising those distances. And then you've got your line, so you can use that to predict any kind of...
Right, so that line is then what we then use to predict the stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And then actually, that's, that was me at GCSE, but at A-level, you sort of realise, well, that's a line, it has an equation, and then you get some formulae that you can work out the intercept and the slope.
Right.
And then you get to uni, and you can derive those equations.
And we get to start calling it a regression problem
And
to sound smarter.
Yeah. And also, actually, at uni, you then can start thinking about, well, we could only have kind of one input thing to help us predict.
Yeah.
But why not have more than that?
Yep.
So at uni, again, you work out how you could have more than one input to help you predict the other thing. So you might want height and gender to help you pick.
You start to use a computer to do the ruler.
Yes,
the job of the ruler now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So happy then, it feels like a regression problem. We've got lots
good.
of inputty things that we've just discussed that we think could impact how many people go to the match.
Yep.
One of which we want to have like representing the split.
Yeah.
And trying to predict the number of people that come to the game.
Yeah.
So actually, when I said one of which is thing that's representing the split, that means it's actually a special type of regression called a regression discontinuity design.
Right, so the discontinuity being the split.
Yeah, this idea that we're trying to measure what happens either side of this cut-off point.
Okay.
And actually, it was first developed by some people in education who were looking at a situation where students had done a test, and if they got over a certain grade, they got a bursary.
Yeah.
So their thoughts were, you get 1 mark lower than whatever that number was, you're not massively different to somebody who got 1 more mark. You might have got out of bed the wrong side that day. And yet they get this bursary. So they wanted to look at kind of the careers and things of people who'd got the bursary and compare them with the non-bursary people. And then they were like, if there's any differences between these two groups, we want to be able to say it's just must be because they got that bursary.
Yeah, so they're taking the complexity of having the whole range of test scores and then turning into this, the test people are turning into, the bursary people are turning into A versus B.
Yeah.
Then they're using this study to see what the effect of that where that boundary is.
Yeah, so it's like a clinical trial.
Right.
And actually, a lot of the terminology, if you do go away and read the paper, a lot of the terminology you'll see, it feels like a clinical trial.
Right.
Because if I was doing a, drug A, drug B,
yeah,
or no drug, then what would I want? I'd want 2 groups that are really, really similar in every single way, as much as I possibly can in real life. And then, like I say, if I give these people the drug and I don't give it to those, then again, any differences in those outcomes must be down to the drug. So that's what they're wanting to do, kind of replicate that clinical trial.
And the drug in this case is finishing above 6.
Yeah, is finishing above. And so it's called the treatment.
Right.
Yeah, I say, if you read the paper, you'll see it's like the treatment effect. Okay, so this is what we need to do then. We want to try and manufacture these two groups like in our clinical trial. So we want to look close to that cutoff. We need to sort of argue that, they're sort of similar
Yeah.
in that way. And also, again, if you go into this kind of design of experiments and surveys, like we said, you want to make sure these two groups are similar. There's kind of a randomness to it.
Yep.
So, again, these are sort of the assumptions that we'd need for regression discontinuity design. So the assumptions you need are there is some arbitrary cutoff. We've definitely got that. And there's this kind of, they're similar, and there's a kind of, you can't fully control whether you're in one or the other.
Yes.
Just like in a clinical trial.
Yep.
So, like I say, it's just a special case of regression analysis. So here's our one equation of the podcast. Trying to predict something. We've got some inputs.
Yeah.
And some of those, like you see, treatment there.
Yeah.
It means treatment effect of being in the split. So it's just regression analysis. We can use what we call, I think you said it earlier, least squares, just the stuff that we would learn if we did a degree in maths.
Yeah.
So checking our assumptions then. First one, we know that we've got a cutoff. So we're in that regression discontinuity space.
Yeah.
Then, if we're claiming that the split has a difference, we should see clear differences between the attendances of these two groups.
Right. How do we spot those clear differences then?
So this is an RD plot, regression discontinuity plot. So you can see you've got your cutoff there. We're just looking at the three teams near that cutoff because this will be slightly important later. Again, you can't go too far away from it because then we are saying, no, they are different now. It's just we're looking at the people who just miss out on that.
Yeah, so the top of the league is quite different to the bottom of the league, but in that middle range.
The people who are really close to that cutoff, again, like we were saying about the people who just missed out on the bursary, we want to have these two treatment groups being very similar. So we're just looking at...
Because it could be, I suppose, the last game before that sets the order of that
exactly,
section. So.
Exactly, and that's what we're talking about, the randomness you can't fully control.
Yeah.
It actually could be the result from another match that meant that you were in seventh.
Yes, that's a good point.
Or it could be a referee decision, or it could be Liverpool, it could hit a beach ball.
Yes,
there's all sorts of randomness, actually, that means exactly where you fall on that, you can't control it. So we feel like there is a difference. So on this plot, you can see these are the sort of attendances post-split.
Yeah.
And there does seem to be a big step change. You can see clear water between, we've got confidence intervals there.
Right,
so you can see clear waters between the attendances here. Like we thought, the ones in the top
so the
player have got higher attendances.
The confidence intervals then not overlapping tells you that you can be confident they're very different.
Yep. So it's supporting our hypothesis.
Yep, that sounds good. That's always handy.
The other assumption then we need is that units either side are similar. Like we say, our two treatment groups are comparable.
Yeah.
So what we've got here is it's a league position pre-split, okay, and then points accumulated pre-split.
Yeah.
So of course this thing's decreasing because, as we said,
that's the league.
This is the Scottish Premier League after 33 games.
Yes.
So it is going in descending order. So it should be like that. But what we're arguing is there's no huge jump.
Right.
Now, I can spot a huge jump there, actually.
So there's kind of a 1 and 2, 3 is in the middle ground, but then 4 to, you can see points 4 have been lower than 9. So that's quite a big range. That's a big blurry mess.
So, there's not anywhere there where you're like, definitely cut that at that point because you can see the two differences. But you could say first and second look different.
Yeah.
And that's, when I said earlier why we've only got 3 points in there, it's because, we don't want to start including Celtic and Rangers. They're different to people.
Yes,
So that's kind of looking at that plot, you see why, okay, close to the threshold, maybe 3 teams either side might be about our limit. So happy then that we feel, people around that midpoint.
Yeah, so I can see why you chose then the 3 because you can see just around that gap. The 12th, the team that finished very bottom are usually going to be quite a bit worse than the team that are 4th, say, but that middle range is very much,
So it feels like we've satisfied the assumptions of the RD design.
Yep, always handy.
Right. So, off we go. We can start using this model. So we've used data for, at the time of writing, it was all the completed seasons. So from 2000, 2001 up to 2023, 24.
Yep.
Took out COVID seasons because we care about the number of people at the match and the split. And then in COVID seasons, there was a lot of restrictions, especially in Scotland, about the number of people that could go to stuff. So
it's going to get complicated and not in a way related to what you're looking at.
No, exactly. So get rid of those.
Yeah.
a mention to the World Football and the Scottish Premier League websites where we got the data from. And yes, as you've seen, we have one observation per club per season. That's following the literature.
Yeah.
And again, I should mention at this point that there's some seminal works in this area. Riley and Witt have done a couple of things on this. Regression discontinuity design in the Scottish Premier League. And so, yeah, followed the literature for their second of their papers.
Yeah.
They did this. And like we've said, we're looking at attendance, and then we're trying to include all sorts of things that are going to account for all the bits of that could impact attendance.
Right. So we've satisfied the assumptions. You've name checked the data to know. You always got to name check your sources. So what did we find? What did you find?
Well, unsurprisingly, we found it did have an effect on attendance. We found that the teams finishing below the cutoff saw a statistically significant difference, a drop in attendance of approximately 30%.
So that's the teams finishing in that bottom half saw their attendances drop by 30% compared to those in the top half.
Yeah.
So that's quite a big change.
Yeah, and Johan did some nice analysis where you can kind of estimate the financial impact of that.
Yeah.
Like I say, that's
2 to 3 games, I suppose, since you're at home
games,
and you're having a attendance of 30, nearly a third down. That is going to be dropped. So that's nice that it matches kind of what you could look at in your exploratory data analysis.
Yeah.
You could look at that gap and you could say that's right. But now we can see, that it is a drop that's significant.
And so then the next thing that we did was something called robustness checks, which again I feel like it's more prevalent in the economics kind of literature to do robustness checks. So what they do is they kind of do the analysis again, but just try and check they're not finding noise.
Yeah.
So they'll, like I say, they'll do it again and go, let's pretend that the split was after 10 matches instead, and so on. So again, if you look at the paper, you'll see us doing a load of these robustness checks. But it was actually one of these robustness checks where, like I said, we started coming up with our reasons why this 30% drop might have happened.
Right.
Because what we decided to do was go in, how are we going to measure this change in attendance? So for the pre-split, we could use all of those 33 games and compare them to the last 5. Or you might say, what about the last 5 games versus the 5 that are in the split? Because maybe something's going on at the end of the season, so compare those.
Yeah, people, it gets towards the summer and...
Yeah, so like I said, weather doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, or like say, it's thinking, are we going to be in the championship play?
Yeah. The games, have an increasing amount of importance towards the end of the year, don't they? So.
Yeah. So we decided to do the same thing again 3 times, and the third thing that we did was looking at the change in attendance by matching it. So if you're playing Celtic post-split, look at the difference between when you played them in the regular season in the first 33 games. So what we found was this statistically significant difference was there in 2 of those versions.
Right.
But not in 1.
Right.
So which one do you think it wasn't in?
Ooh, I have no idea.
The matched one.
Right.
So, like I say, it didn't matter if you used all 33 or the last 5. Like, you got the significant 30% difference.
Right.
But if you matched them, that Celtic after versus Celtic before, you got... And that, again, that's what we saw in our exploratory data analysis, right? That the point looked similar for Celtic either side.
Right.
So it was us doing this robustness check, where we were like, maybe this difference is just coming from, it's driven by the opposition.
Yeah.
And then, of course...
So that statistically significant difference comes from whether you played basically Rangers or Celtic in that gap.
Yeah.
And if you're in the bottom, it's very unlikely that you did play them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to conclude, what we found was that, the split does impact attendance by about 30%, and our hypothesis was that it's due to this missed opportunity to play against Celtic and Rangers, your glamour clubs.
Right. So it definitely, you have a big possible reduction in funds then from doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's only kind of a subset of teams. So I should be honest here. Like I say, Johan's done all the maths on the finances. But the point is, as we said, they introduced 2 more teams for more money. They have got more money.
Yeah.
You play more games.
Yeah.
More teams.
Yeah.
So that's definitely worked.
Yeah.
What we're saying is it's kind of not everyone's getting the same slice of the pie.
Yeah. So do you see, or I suppose the Scottish football clubs watching this should be paying attention to this and thinking that last game, that last deciding point between 6 or 7, I would guess probably the 6th team doesn't win the championship very often because they're in a gap between 6th and 1st already. They're not getting that fresh start, like you said, in the American playoffs. But it is a big bonus in terms of money, or rather, it's avoiding that drop off in the money. So they're just, you want to keep trying till the end of the year.
Yeah, and so Johan was presenting this at something called the Football Collective, which is like a conference, but it's supposed to bring together academia and industry. And he was talking to a Scottish football director, a Scottish football team.
Of a team we obviously cannot name, and I don't know either.
No, we can't, because what that person was saying was actually that, of course, players especially, are never going to lose on purpose. Like you've said, your managing director, the person in charge of the finances, is going to say, keep winning.
Yeah.
So that we get into the top 6. But actually, that sporting director was saying there is something about momentum for next season. At that point, we're not thinking, like, you're right, we can't win the league.
Yeah.
Can't get relegated. We're thinking about next season. So actually if you think about it, if you go into the relegation playoff, you're going to play the worst of the 6 teams in the league. So yeah, you're going to be winning games, scoring lots of games, and actually that feel-good factor for the players, for the fans, could actually...
That's interesting. So do you think further analysis, you could look into how it looked to the start of next year?
Yeah.
But also just thinking that things like cup games, if cup games are going on later on in the year after the split, is then there a bonus to having that confidence from beating everybody in that lower section that could come and possibly be a benefit in that the cup games as well? Good for the confidence. But
yeah. Also, and like I say, here's the moral of the story then. If you want to know a little bit more about the detail of the maths, I would say go and have a look at that little 6-page paper. If you want to know even more, and if you want to see us investigating various other things, so we look at something that we call going on holiday for the player. Like we've said, do the players stop trying?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to look at even more things, then coming soon, hopefully, is a longer academic paper in the new year. You should see that. So.
Right. Look forward to reading it.
Yeah. And that's it. That's
the story of the split.
my little adventure in the Scottish Premier League.
Right. Very interesting.
So, yeah. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time for the next instalment of The Corridor of Uncertainty.
Thanks.